So, as you know, we have now launched a brand new brand over here involved with Daily Wire, and it is called Jeremy's Razors. And we are proud to have on this show my good friend, Jeremy himself, the God King, and the inspiration for Jeremy's Razors, fighting back against Harry's Razors. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining the show and taking time from your busy God King schedule.
Are you really proud to have me on the show, Ben?
I mean, no, but what am I? How dare you, sir? How dare you? Yes, I'm super proud to have you. I mean, it's hard to book you today because you're very busy. You're making the media rounds, launching Jeremy's Razors. And honestly, I'm really proud that we are doing this because it is a pretty spectacularly awesome move. So why don't you explain the background to Jeremy's Razor and how this got started in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So a year ago today, Harry's Razors, who is an advertiser on the Michael Knowles show, caught wind that there was some conservatism among our conservative hosts. Michael had a conversation with Candace Owens, not even on the Daily Wire, on a PragerU show a year earlier, in which they discussed whether or not gender dysphoria is a mental illness. And a Twitter account that had exactly 2 followers pointed this out to Harry's, and Harry's immediately, of course, had to virtue signal and say, "Oh, we had no idea. We're shocked, I tell you, to discover that the people we're paying to help us reach a conservative audience have conservative views." They called those views inexcusable, said that that there was values misalignment between our 2 companies, and immediately pulled $80,000 worth of advertising off of Michael's show. And at that very moment, I knew we had to launch a razor company. And the reason is because these woke corporations do this all the time. They pay conservatives to help them reach an audience. They pay us to endorse their products. And we only do it if they're good products. We're proud to have them as sponsors. We tell our audience about them. And then at the first sign of trouble, they stab us in the back. They betray us, not by pulling their money. I want to be clear. Any advertiser can pull their money off of our shows for any reason. That's just doing business. But they have to do it publicly. They have to go virtue signal. And by virtue signaling and publicly saying, as Harry's did, that our views are inexcusable, they're telling all of our other advertisers that the only excusable thing to do would be for them to also cancel us. So it's a direct attack on our business. It's a betrayal of our partnership. And I've been complaining about it for years. Everyone in conservative media has been complaining about it for years. And what really happened here is I just got tired of complaining about it. I thought, why don't we actually do something about it instead? Why don't we give Harry's a bad day? And why don't we give conservatives a place where they can spend their money, get a good shave, and give their money to someone who doesn't openly hate them and repudiate them every time some 2-person Twitter account calls them names.
And Jeremy, I think not only is this obviously a smart business play because it gives a lot of people a place to go who otherwise, they still need a razor. You can boycott Gillette, you can boycott Harry's, but if there's no other place to put your money, how are you going to shave in the morning? And so that means that you still need a razor. So we're giving people a place to go. But I think that it also is an attempt to push these companies into a realization, which is that if you alienate more than half of your audience, there will be competitors who arise to smack you directly in the face. And I think that's what this is really about.
Well, that's exactly right. All of these companies think that they can bifurcate the culture without bifurcating the economy. What I mean by that is they think that they can essentially push conservatives to the side culturally, but because conservatives have no alternatives economically, they'll still have to give them, the woke corporations, their money. And the only way that we're going to change the behavior of these corporations is to create actual market incentives. You make a good point. Boycotts don't work. They don't work because they're temporary. They're temporary because at the end of the day, you still need a razor. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Nike endorses Colin Kaepernick, you still need some tennis shoes. It doesn't matter if Disney puts all kinds of bad messages to sucker punch you in their movies. You still need entertainment at night. And for that reason, they pay no price for deliberately alienating 50% of their audience. I want to create a price. I want to create an actual penalty by creating a market around the sort of disenfranchised conservative buyer, not just because I want to see the country further balkanized or further split apart, but because I believe in the long run, the only way to change the behavior of these big companies is to actually incentivize them with market forces into having to come compete for our business again. They have to actually take a loss so that they can realize, we better actually change our behavior.
And Jeremy, I'm hoping that this obviously is a model for a lot of others to jump into the space. We've been doing this on the entertainment side. Our entire premise was the left is slapping you in the face with entertainment. They're constantly making movies that are messaged at how horrible you are. And then they are making money off of you at the same time and using that money to funnel into these little art house projects that are designed to undermine your relationship with your kids. And we don't have to do that either. I mean, it's why we've gotten into the entertainment business. I know that, you and I, in coming up with this sort of business strategy, our entire point here has been the more that the left is willing to alienate a broad majority of Americans, the more we're willing to take their money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There are other people doing it. Dan Bongino, I think, is kind of a leader in the space, investing in companies that are meant to service a conservative audience. Glenn Beck, as is often the case, was a pioneer. He launched his jeans company, I don't know, almost a decade ago trying to do this. He was a little bit, I think, out ahead of the curve, but definitely pioneered in the space and showed a lot of us a way that we could actually use, our innovation to create opportunities to change behavior. That's the important thing that I want to emphasize. Conservatives aren't going to win by lamenting the loss of the economy or lamenting the loss of the culture. We actually have to do something proactive. We have to go create a new economy. We have to create a new culture. The country that we live in, our founders, our grandparents, even our parents' generation, they actually worked to build it. And we're losing it because we're not doing the work. That's a natural thing. When you're successful, it's very easy to let yourself go a little bit, right? The heavyweight champ doesn't stay the heavyweight champ forever because he gets used to having those nice craft services over at the place where he's shooting his Nike commercial or whatever it is, and he gets a little soft. When you get soft, you start to lose. That's fine. It's fine that we take a few blows. We just have to learn the lesson, and the lesson is get yourself back in fighting shape and go out there and build a future. If we build a future, we'll win.
Yeah, so Jeremy, I was noticing this today in the context of what Disney is doing. So it is amazing how few activists can really motivate these woke corporations into doing what they want. I mean, with Harry's, It was literally one guy with 2 followers who tweeted at Harry's, and suddenly they're pulling $80,000 in advertising and slapping our audience. When it comes to Disney, Disney has legitimately a couple 100,000 employees, and they got a letter from like 200 radical LGBT employees, and suddenly they're announcing that they are opposing particular bills in Texas that are meant to protect children against gender mutilation and hormone replacement therapy and surgical sterilization.
Our friend Iowa Hawk said on Twitter today, notice that you'll only ever be banned from Twitter for stating opinions that are held by almost 90% of everyone. You'll never actually be banned for holding a fringe opinion that's held by, say, 10% of people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complete inversion.
So Disney, but I'm amazed that these massive corporations that are supposed to be beholden to their shareholders, they really aren't. They're beholden to a tiny cadre of people inside their companies united with an overwhelming media force. And this is the part that people forget, is that the media are so on the side of the woke here that corporations are just scared to death of the woke. And because the right is not organized, and forget the right, the middle, nobody basically to the right of the hard left is organized in any serious way. That means that a very small group of people can move a giant corporation to do incredibly radical things. Disney is a company that caters to parents and children. And now they are taking the position that K through 3 children should be indoctrinated in sexual orientation and gender identity in Florida. I mean, it's crazy.
It's unbelievable. And really, these companies are beholden to their 23-year-old woke employees, the most junior employees in their company. And it's because this sort of HR movement that's taken place over the last 50 years has really politicized what goes on inside a company. You have a lot of conservative business owners, the kind of people who give large donations to conservative nonprofits at the end of the year, and nevertheless, they allow their employees to be indoctrinated by this HR culture. I actually think the loss of corporate America is the biggest untold story in why things are as bad as they are in the country right now. You have to remember the federal government was created by the states, right? Like, there are these institutions between state power and the individual that have always not only created the state in the case of this country, but always, even in other countries, been the bulwark sort of to defend the rights of the people, because the individual always has a corporate action problem, right? And so you have these institutions. The corporate America is the biggest one in America. The church is probably the second one. The family is the ultimate one. And the left has been systematically infiltrating every one of those institutions and corroding it over the last generation, until finally, when corporate America falls, you actually have no bulwark left against state power. And that's why it's so important that we actually create a new breed of corporation, that hasn't been infiltrated, that isn't beholden to the woke left, that's willing to stand for traditional American values, stand for the individual, because, again, to that sort of collective action problem, the individual can't do it on their own. It's why we sued the federal government at the Daily Wire to stop Joe Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandate, because it's not enough for individual Americans to quit their jobs rather than getting the vaccine. Joe Biden doesn't care if you quit your job. Joe Biden doesn't care if you don't have enough money. He actually he knows that eventually you'll have to turn to the state to help you provide for your kids if you don't have employment. The only way to stand up to state power is with corporate action. That's why a company like the Daily Wire has to file that lawsuit, and there were other companies, of course, who did. That's why states have to intervene, and there were several states who intervened in that case. And it's why you have to create companies like Jeremy's Razors or Daily Wire Entertainment, because, again, the individual acting on his own can't protect his rights. The individual acting through intervening institutions creates a sort of collective power that allows them to have victory.
So, folks, if you haven't seen the commercial that Jeremy cut for Jeremy's Razors, it is one of the funniest commercials ever made.
It's as serious as this conversation.
Yeah, it is hysterically funny. I mean, it is models and sports cars and flamethrowers. And again, the basic case that is being made by Jeremy's Razors is you don't have to be right wing in order to buy a Jeremy's Razor. You just have to not be a woke jackass. As long as you're not a woke jackass and you just want to shave, then just get a razor and shave, and we will leave you alone. We're not going to lecture you about toxic masculinity. We're not going to do a Gillette commercial about the wonders and joys of helping your transgender son, meaning a biological female, to shave her face. We're not going to do a commercial in which we lecture you about how if you believe that men are men and women are women, this makes you a bigot. We're not going to do any of those things. We're going to sell you a razor. You're going to shave with the razor. And if this is too much to ask from the American people, I honestly don't know what's left.
And Ben, one other point. We're having a lot of fun. For a long time, because conservatism has been on the retreat, right? We've been being defeated. We tend to walk around with our heads down. We tend to complain. We tend to be, to essentially say the sky's falling. And that's because the sky probably is falling. But one of the things that's really important to us at the Daily Wire is that not only do we fight back and fight hard, but that we enjoy the fight, that we feel privileged to be a part of the fight. And so when you watch the Harry's Razors commercial, what I hope you see is a company that's actually taking the fight to the left, a company that's putting its money where its mouth is, a company that's trying to proactively build a better future, and a company that's having a really good time. We're actually interested not only in life and liberty, but pursuing happiness. Like it's the whole enchilada with us. And I think that's something that sets the Daily Wire apart.
Well, go check it out today. It's IHateHarrys.com, which I'm sure Harry's Razor really appreciates. My guess is that when they pulled their $80,000 of advertising, they did not imagine that this was going to be the result. But that's precisely the problem. Now, hopefully, other companies will realize that similar results will follow. It's IHateHarrys.com to pick up your subscription to Jeremy's Razor. The razor is great, by the way. It happens to be a really, really good razor. Jeremy, congratulations on the launch of the brand new company, and congratulations on the year's best commercial. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.